Today on Edge of Wonder, we present part 2 in our SRA series with our special guest, none other than our good friend and whistleblower, Laura Eisenhower. Listen carefully as she exposes cases of ritual abuse, the mental state of SRA victims, forms of abuse, and how mind control ties in. But be warned, this series may not be for the faint of heart. If you're ready to go dark and deep with us, here's another mind-blowing episode from the Edge of Wonder.
Welcome to Edge of Wonder. We're with our good friend Laura Eisenhower, experiencer and intuitive empath. And Rob, do you want to start us off with this?
So we just had a show with Justin Deschamps, and we went over what SRA is, Satanic Ritual Abuse, and what it does to people. Now we're actually going to talk to Laura more about specific cases with people and get a little bit more into the details of Satanic Ritual Abuse. So Laura, thanks a lot for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is interesting, as you said, you don't usually use the computer, but for this we actually need to because there's so much stuff going on. And I just want to say, I've watched a few videos on YouTube with you just kind of letting loose stream of consciousness about this stuff, and I've been amazed at some of the stuff that you've dropped, because not a lot of people, not only are people not open to talking about satanic ritual abuse, they don't actually listen to what the people who've been through it, what they're saying and what they've been through. And I'd kind of like to leave it to you, how would you like to start this?
The satanic forces have infiltrated everything from, the church, religion, media, Hollywood. I mean, it's something that has actually decided that it's wise to include blood sacrifice, pedophilia, sodomy, and the thing is, it's very rooted in something that relates to the path of the Typhonian tradition, and it's used in order to manifest immortality for the people engaged with negative alien forces. They consider themselves more powerful than the Christ solar deity because they've managed to split apart the masculine and feminine and split apart polarity, which is something that we are encoded with in our DNA, to begin to operate through that imbalance and hold the upper hand. That's why we see continual false flags, world wars, and we're in a trauma-based society where we're so fragmented and split that these things consider themselves to have more power than the Christ Sophia divine template that we're all born with. So satanic forces are really here to divide that template, which keeps our DNA dumbed down. So when we look metaphorically at the tree of knowledge has been targeted with mind control. All the satanic ritual abuse stuff is to create a feeding frenzy on the vulnerable, because if you're not connected to true source in the unified field, you have to take that energy from somebody else. And the only way that they can continue it and to stay in power is to target the youth and to use individuals without a birth certificate, so there's no accountability to supplement themselves. It's like, okay, we might be deficient in vitamin C. Maybe we didn't get enough oranges growing up, so we might take a supplement. Well, it's a lot different than having a deficiency of life force itself and becoming a vampire, which is the systems that run this world. But we're the true powers that be, and the minute we come together and we don't allow ourselves to be played, and we don't allow ourselves to be the product of it and be the enablers, then we override it and it falls to nothing. I mean, it falls apart. So it really doesn't have any power over us. The only power it has is the power we give it.
Yeah. I mean, and that's with Justin Deschamps, that's exactly what we were talking about. And I was saying, one thing I was telling him was that really, you have the 99% and the 1%. We're the 99%. If we all came together, we could it's so easy to overpower the 1%. Yeah. But it's they're keeping us in a state of fear and a constant fighting, so we don't realize that our potential of what we could possibly do if we really came together.
Right. And that's where the satanic ritual abuse comes in, because it powers up the things that we adopt a belief system about. And for it to stay alive, it has to steal and steal and steal and create propaganda and create belief systems that we attach ourselves to. But the fragmented parts of ourselves are belief systems. We pick and choose parts of ourselves, but we're not coming from our core center where we can have discernment. So most of the people that step forward that have talked about their experiences have all pointed to this need to create enough trauma to bind the child to the perpetrator. so that they feel so guilty or so defiled that they need to stay connected to the one that kind of put them in that situation. Because what they'll do is they'll convince them, look what you did. You just killed this. You just murdered this. You just ate this. You just did this. And so they sort of create this feeling of shame and use it as a way to create this loyalty so that they won't say anything. Yes. On top of the fact that if you were to say anything, this is the ramifications. And they've mastered the art of psychology to the point where mind control is based on certain things that they've studied. They have studied and watched in the human race over the course of many years. So the thing is, we're born with amnesia. When we're born into this human realm, we don't remember our galactic memories. They did not cut their DNA off of their galactic memories, but they cut their DNA off of having the ability to hold avatar consciousness. So they became a vampiric race that have not really digressed us, but they more cut us off from our memories so that they can implant us with memories that are false, which makes us feel lowly, like we need to go and be redeemed, we're the sinners, we need to go to church, or in order to feel any sense of self-worth, we need to be successful in this field, and the school systems adopt this approach. Or when we're sick, we give our power away to the medical industry that will give us, some sense of a trajectory of whether or not we're going to be okay. And this is what you need to do to be okay, instead of us recognizing that we're sovereign and we have everything that we need within us. So they're sort of operating outside of the lack of memories, but they still compromise their DNA, where for the human race, that DNA is just dormant. It's not compromised. It hasn't been cut off. So there's a huge difference. So they're threatened by us. Well, one of the most important things that I've noticed is that every time somebody wants to come forward with their story, there is something that's put in place to undermine their story. So immediately when you start to share it, or if they start to share it, people draw the conclusion that they must be false memory implants because they're already figuring that there's mind control involved. But what's different about somebody that's been through satanic ritual abuse is very often when they remember things, they're beginning to download something that can't be erased. Because there's a lot about mind wiping, especially with secret soldier programs or MyLab situations. But satanic ritual abuse, because it starts at such a young age, not only do they program somebody to be completely terrorized at the thought of bringing anything forward, if they're able to get over that hump, then they have something that they send them to try and convince them that those memories are false. So for example, the first part of it would be, if you were to expose the Luciferian covenant and this agreement, this is what will happen to you. And they'll show the child pictures in real life of somebody being absolutely tortured if they were to go through those motions. And I don't want to, throw out the graphic details of this, but a person could speculate, oh, what are you getting that from the internet? Some sort of stories that you're getting? Well, I do readings. I've been doing sessions with satanic ritual abuse victims for the last decade. I wouldn't say that all my clients are people that have experienced this, but I have heard enough cases that are completely and totally similar with individuals that have become more public. And so a lot of these folks that are coming forward have been victims of child trafficking. And there's a lot more cases than we can imagine. I like I said, I talk to people all the time that are not ready to share their stories. Some have written books that feel more comfortable now. The minute you give somebody like that respect and you give them a voice, and they still feel loved and appreciated, they're just ready to just spill the beans. Because the thing is, you can wipe memories. Again, they do that with SRA victims. They also do that with people that are in secret space programs. But wiping a memory is only so much, because we have so much more to our multidimensional body that we're beginning to wake up to. So as we're moving into this ascension cycle, a lot of people are beginning to recall memories, and a lot of these memories are very similar. And I can say, from experience, that I can talk to one person in this country and then 2 weeks later talk to somebody else with very similar stories. They don't even know each other. And then there's also books written, so somebody might be like, well, they might have read the book and they're mimicking the memories.
Right.
A lot of them have not even heard of them. These are very painful stories. Most of the clients that I have are like completely scared. They're like, I can't talk about this until either my father or grandfather dies, or my uncle who did this to me, or this family line I'm connected to does not have this grip on me anymore. There's a lot of people that are trying to tell their stories about the satanic ritual abuse that they've been under. They all have very, very similar stories. There's naming the same names. They're coming from different countries. They don't have a political agenda. It has nothing to do with right or left. It has nothing to do with Donald Trump. It has nothing to do with the Democratic Party.
All right, so now we're going to actually go into some specific cases that Laura's compiled for us of folks that have actually been through this and what they've experienced.
Right.
So most of these cases, and I'm going to name a few names. Svali is one of them. She talks about how they cover up the rituals and they have mastered the art of covering up rituals so that they can't be busted, right? Because I think a lot of people think, why is the law enforcement not going after these people? We have all these people in prisons all over the country, jails all over the world. Why are they able to get away with this? And so she talks about all the cover-ups and all the things that they do to kind of clear the scene of any, wrongdoing, and how they exterminate the bodies and how they plan ahead for certain rituals in certain locations that nobody will know about. So she's somebody to check out.
Exterminate the bodies.
So if they're sacrificing.
Yeah.
Right? So there's different methods that they use apparently to sacrifice these bodies. Some of it is even in, you've seen in some of these shows, like they use that acid. They'll actually, this is what I've heard, they'll like melt bodies and they'll like totally destroy like, people's bodies to get rid of the evidence, right?
Right. And they'll pick and choose people that nobody is really missing, right? So they might choose homeless people or orphans or, And then they have breeding programs so that there's no record of the birth. And they will use women to create babies that they take and use. And then sometimes they simulate something to just traumatize a child where it's not even an actual ritual. Because if they don't feel like they can get away with the murder, they'll simulate something to create the same effect. Because ultimately what they want is the life force of the child. Mm-hmm. And so whether they're doing something sacrificial to take the adrenaline or something from the pineal gland is one thing. The other thing would be, how can we control that child so that we can have them be the handler and be the one that passes this on generation to generation. So there's the whole needing to feed, but also needing to create the next generation of controllers and handlers.
Wow.
And I've seen it firsthand. So, a lot of people can, blow it off thinking this is just crazy internet research. When you have these case studies every day, at least a couple times a week, of people that are surviving these stories that aren't ready to come forward, and you see how it relates to these other people that have become more known, who have been willing to put their story out, there's no doubt in one's mind.
Laura, give me a ballpark figure, like just a ballpark. How many of these cases have you seen over the last 10 years? In
the work that I do?
Yeah. Like 100 or like?
Well, to be I would say 30 to 50.
Jeez.
And in the events that I do and the people that I've met that I haven't done readings with, that are super soldiers that have been through projects and programs like Project Mannequin. James Casbolt, who is also known as Michael Prince, who is now in jail. He was a part of Project Mannequin. And anybody who's curious about him, you can find him online. He wrote an online book called Agent Buried Alive. He gives a lot of information about the origins of all of this, his particular experience. But the thing is, when it comes down to trauma-based mind control, you have alters. Yeah. And they can trigger alters. Yep. So you might get, and this is what we see with our politicians, you can get a really sincere side of a politician or a leader and feel really good about them. Because a lot of us are very intuitive, and vibrationally we can feel really good about somebody. Oh, they seem sincere. But the minute they put in a different code and they activate something else, that person can be off. Dealing with sex slavery, being an assassin, or joining in with this sort of demonic, like child hunting that they do at like Bohemian Grove, where they'll send a bunch of kids out and they'll hunt them. Jeez. The thing is that they have compromised their physical vessel to allow demonic energies to possess them. So we can't even look at it like it's, oh, that's George Bush, oh, that's Bill Clinton, oh, that's Hillary Clinton. So I don't want to name names, which I just did, but
the Clintons, we don't mind.
But it's a part of this belief system that goes back way into our ancient history. It has to do with how to maintain the Illuminati bloodlines, and they utilize technology to jump timelines so they don't have to go through the death cycle and be purified like the rest of us, who have to kind of, reset our energy and come into a physical incarnation. and advance ourselves, even if it means through hardship. Whereas you don't see them having hardship so much. You see them just gaining wealth and gaining control, but they actually have major hardship. We're talking trauma-based mind control. We're talking childhood rape and abuse. And a lot of these people that are in power are so traumatized that they're not even themselves anymore, because something else is like, we fragmented you enough and now we're a race that's taken over. So we're in an alien government.
Jeez. So in other words, you're saying that like even these people, these high-level elites in government and these officials and everything themselves have been through this process of trauma-based mind control and everything else. That's what you're saying.
But they have certain alters that are in agreement to being greedy and after power, and they're so afraid of losing it that they're willing to give their children away. They're willing to have their own kids be breeders of these ritual abuses. They've been taught that this is actually a good thing. There's even like the hidden hand in his whole thing where if we create enough darkness in this polarity, something's going to come and turn it all around. You know, but it depends who you are within all of it, because there's compartmentalization, there's this whole kind of pyramid sort of thing. The thing is, like, why are some okay with it and some know how to shield themselves? Like, I'm in a presidential bloodline that could have easily become that somehow. They wanted to infiltrate. I don't know why there's a difference there and how we didn't get all caught up in that, because I've never been in any projects. None of my family members have been. But I think that there has to be a certain instinct or teaching there already. The Aleister Crowley and Thothian energies are a part of the origination of the ET government treaties. So we're not just talking satanic ritual abuse. We're talking how that also translates into the gray alien reptilian agenda, and how certain beings in ET races have wanted to heal their genetic digression by abducting and becoming actually better because of the agreements that they have with certain humans that they interface with, whereas others stay under that sort of rulership and only want to do the bidding of those more controlling forces. So just like we have the ability to snap out of what we were raised in, whatever matrix program, we have the ability to step back and say, wait a second, I don't comply. You know, but somebody else could look at us and say, well, you're surrounded by all these other people that have complied. So it takes a little bit of extra momentum coming from us saying, hey, you know, I'm not in agreement to that. Okay, first of all, people like Fiona Barnett, which people should Google, has been talking about the Australian pedophilia network. There is this thing going on between Australia, the United States, and the UK. Those are kind of like the prime centers of where these rings are taking place. And she has a documentary out there called Candy Girl, which I'd recommend. But if this kind of thing is too difficult for people, I would take your time with it, because it's almost like you'll never be the same again. I've spent enough years bedridden over this kind of information. It's not like something I can easily share, like, hey, this is what's going on in the world. It's like you have to be prepared and ready. And so I'm not coming from a place of, let me just throw this out there and I'm sure it's easy for you all to integrate. I have a lot of respect for the process it takes a person to go through, because so many people have invested their lives into the system, into believing in these power structures, from the royal family to the politicians to whatever. And they're arguing about the surface stuff. Oh, like Donald Trump sounded like a womanizer, or it's like the surface stuff is important. But if we don't start looking at the war that's going on underneath it all to see who is the deep state and who isn't, and we end up just fighting over the surface stuff, we're going to find ourselves in a very, very limited dynamic. It's a similar thing with, you know, just obsessing in a relationship, like, oh, you don't like me because I'm fat? Sorry, you know... Sorry, don't put that in there, but it's just like, at a certain point, it's just...
definitely getting in there.
I mean, it's like, come on, people. It's like, we're looking at all the surface stuff, which is important, but if we don't look at the programming and mind control behind it, we're never going to heal. Sarah Ruth Ashcroft. Fiona Barnett was very much standing up for her when she came out with the fact that she was abused by Hillary Clinton, just like Kathy O'Brien. I've had a lot of clients that have talked about Hillary, too. One of the quotes from Sarah Ruth Ashcroft is, I was only 8 when I encountered Hillary as a part of an occult ritual abuse event. I'm now 36. It never goes away, as a fellow survivor. So when you actually find her, you know, this isn't some troll. This isn't like you Google somebody who doesn't have a real profile. They have documentaries, they have stories, they have names, they have locations.
And they're very active.
And they're being
Twitter,
largely ignored.
Right.
And everybody's getting all heated up about somebody groping somebody at work, And okay, that's important.
And then meanwhile,
sexual harassment.
We're not talking
We're
about
not
that.
paying attention to the child trafficking. She says, just even looking at her profile, she is a survivor of ritual abuse, mind control, child porn, and sex trafficking. And she also considers herself a philosopher by education and a truth warrior. She brought up celebrities. She named names that nobody has even looked into, like Tom Hanks, Meryl Streep. Everybody's still like fine with it. I even visit their like pages, their celebrity pages. You might have one person that says, wow, I heard somebody bring up this pedophilia thing against you. Whereas somebody like Garrison Keillor that touched somebody inappropriately on their back has been fired from his career.
Yeah, right.
So when you see this sort of thing in the Kavanaugh and Dr. Ford and a lot of the fakery that's connected to it, I'm not trying to undermine people coming forward. I'm not trying to say, oh, you shouldn't come forward with your story. But if you're going to come forward with your story, bring the rest of the iceberg with you and be willing to have those people's back. Because if they have the courage to tell us what they've been through, we need to have the courage to talk about it.
The issue comes in where the names that have been hitting on are names that people have grown up with.
Of course.
You know, they
Same with
love
Bill
these
Cosby.
people. Yeah, I mean, actually, when that happened with Bill Cosby, that was like, I was like devastated. Actually, I didn't want to believe it at all. That was like the first time
You had your Jello pudding. You were eating it, and you were like,
I ate so many pudding pops when I was a kid too. It's
No,
like,
and it was, and, you know, and he was on CNN right in the beginning of all the hype and everything, and he was, you know, there, and the CNN was believing him at the time. It was like when he first came out, and I was just like, yeah, you know, this can't be true, blah, blah, blah. But then it's like, and that was only, I think it was like 3 women, and then after that CNN interview, there was like 10 more that came out, and then I was just like, oh, man.
and this is the power of
This
attachments.
must be true.
Creating attachments. And the thing is, a lot of the, what's been most heavily targeted is sexual energy and the energy of innocence, of being a child and wanting to look up to somebody. And then when it comes to when you get older and it's about relationships, then you feel vulnerable because you've shared a lot of yourself. You want to believe in that person. So look at all the breakups that have happened. Look at the epidemic of divorce. If 2 people were willing to step up with a whole bunch of people, 2 families coming together, spending a lot of money, saying, I do, with all these vows, they believed in something. And very often those relationships don't work out. It's just as crushing as seeing somebody you grew up with, or even a father figure that ends up maybe violating you. I mean, the thing is, attachments are inevitable. We're in a biological body. We have wants and needs. And when that starts to get played and we form attachments, this is part of the mind control, is that they form a bond. I mean, some of the clients that I have are like Mengele, the Nazi doctor, who's one of the most damaging individuals that did the worst experimentation and the worst kind of mind control. Even some of the people I've worked with still consider him like,
wow,
a good thing.
Yeah.
But then there's a part of them that's, and you see more than one side of them where they're like all about it, and then they're like, oh my gosh, right? I mean, look at religion. We're all able to accept, or at least some of us, that a lot of these cases connected to the Vatican and connected to the church, priests who are given a spiritual trust have violated children. So why wouldn't that happen in the political arena or the... So we can't be so shocked about it and think it's BS. I've had so many clients that have been raped and molested by their parents. That's the last place you would expect
That is
it.
crazy. And I think what's really important is too, because I mean, part of the Cabal's mission is to destroy Christianity and all the other religions, anything upright. They just want to turn upside down, right? So what better way than infiltrate like the church and all these other religions, and then it's like it turns everybody, oh, religion must be bad.
Exactly. And then it turns people away from God.
Exactly.
It's a targeting on...
And again, it's not the religion that is bad. It's just what the people have done to the church itself.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important message that's not getting through the media.
Exactly.
You know, they're like focusing all these scandals because exactly what you said. It gets people to disbelieve in God or like the divine creator, I guess you can say as well.
It's all targeting. You know, everything that is sacred has been targeted. So our own relationship with God, people don't even like the word God anymore because of religion. You say the word Christ, they're like, ugh. And if you don't say the word Christ and you just talk about energy, oh, you must be a Satanist. It's like everybody's freaking out. Nobody knows what to think. So what I like to encourage people to do is get into your sovereignty, get into your authenticity, understand that you're made of the elements, earth, air, fire, water. We're moving into this amazing window. We already are in it, where the ether is available to purify our inner elements, upgrade our DNA, help us to connect to the multidimensional cosmos, and help us to heal the earth grids and correct all these reversals. And so that's what being spiritual is. It's not about a belief system. It's about being a co-creator from a level of integrity and responsibility, and not needing to give your power away all the time, because that's what they leverage. And if we give too much power to ourselves by giving some sort of permission to be in a position of leadership, that's what they did when they recruited me to Mars. Oh, we'll give you this position. I'm like, I don't want any position. I know that you're trying to pump me up and make me somebody that I'm not. I'm here for unity. Unfortunately, you're picking on somebody that's a massive Libra that lives by the law of balance and
Libras.
whatever. You don't have to be a Libra to think this way either. But the whole deal is, how can we pull people into a polarized way of being? It's either you're on the side of the left path, the Aleister Crowley, the black magic, survival of the fittest. If we have the ability to manipulate, then why not? And then the other manipulation, which is feeling like a sinner and just like morality. And so these institutions that were really well-intentioned, similar to the Mars agenda and certain timelines that were well-intentioned, if there's a crack in the foundation, something easily comes in. So even though Christianity to me is a positive thing and it's a great foundation for people, it doesn't really work with a total male-dominant system. So there's a crack right there. A lot of the Satanist energies have to do with the reversal mother coding. It has to do with the Baphomet. It has to do with Achamoth. It has to do with how we fell into this lower harmonic universe and how we got infiltrated through that inability for us to function in our divine blueprint of cooperation between polarity. So duality began to grow and grow and grow, and these dark aggressive forces began to take advantage of everybody buying into duality, thinking we have to fight these wars. I'm on this side, I'm on that side. I need to have power over her, she needs to have power. Because women do it too. That's why it has nothing to do with gender. There have been times in history where women were the complete and total black widow, just manipulative, murderous. So it's really about the energy circulation, because the thing is, when we're at war, we're really at war within ourselves. It's the program, and it's and the thing is, we're born into it. We're stuck in front of a TV with these different scenarios. People buy into the products, the Barbie and Ken, the watching the cartoons, watching the sitcom, and this and that. We don't have real relationships with our parents. We're counting on Bill Cosby to make us feel like we got a dad. We're looking to something else. And the devastating part is not because we necessarily attached ourselves, because probably we just thought they were at least decent people.
Yeah, wow.
That's the hard part, because you know that they're influencing the youth. Same with priests, same with Hollywood. And it doesn't mean they're all bad, so it's not like,
blanket,
like push it all away. But how can we purge out the evils so that the integrity of the true expression of why it's even there can begin to shine through? So some of the people that I've gotten familiar with, some of them I've met personally. Kathy O'Brien, who wrote Transformation of America, she talks about being a sex slave and what they call a presidential model. And basically she was sold into a pedophilia ring when she was a child, and her father was already a pedophile. And they said, in order for you to not get in trouble with the law, just give your child over to us and we will grant you immunity. And then all of a sudden she was being passed around from different presidents, different world leaders, and people that you would look at and think, wow, they're very prominent, they're very successful, they're very good at what they do. We're talking cops, we're talking lawyers, we're talking doctors, we're talking scientists. They all come together. And the thing is, when there is enough of a desire for wealth, power, fame, beauty, whatever, because it's in Hollywood too, you open yourself up to something else. Sometimes you're given the option to pull yourself in a little bit more. That whole selling your soul is almost a joke from the 80s from movies like, oh, I sold my soul to the devil to be a famous musician. That stuff really exists. And so they use children, though, that are born into these families or born into these agreements that aren't just centered in these 13 families. There's different branches of them. This was during a time where you would hear more about Monica Lewinsky scandals. I don't even know what exact year that was, but when you look at when her book was actually ready to come out and sort of the surface layers of scandals, then that almost makes it difficult for somebody to give that the time of day. And this is what we're seeing today. I'm not saying that the Me Too movement is a negative thing. I think it's incredibly important. But with all the accusations or claims that satanic ritual abuse has been going on, or pedophilia or child trafficking, we're spending more time looking at more of the surface issues connected to sexual harassment and groping. And yes, that's important to call out, don't get me wrong. But when that is creating public outrage, but everybody else that has been through these MK Ultra satanic ritual abuse programs are being ignored, that have been spoken about, not just in this administration, but for many, many years, even like a decade, then there's a big question mark.
Well, I was going to say, so it seems like, it's like looking at it from the cabal's perspective, right? It's kind of like, here's this thing that came out, this Me Too movement, and their thing is like trying to take whatever's in society for their own purpose and their own reason, right? I mean, so if this movement started happening, I could see them coming into this and be like, well, there's also these people now talking about the SRA or whatever. So if we just have everyone focus on this and less attention, then it's like less attention is being drawn from this over here and more people are focused on this over here again, like this is based on what you're saying. It's like this issue is real and important, but it's like this is where all the really dark and evil things are really happening, but yet we're not focusing on it, right?
It's like not looking at the root. We can all have physical symptoms. We might, go to a doctor and get a pharmaceutical and get a quick fix, but we're not looking at what is the emotional root of it? What is the trauma behind it? So I think a lot of people get sucked into these stories because it's more relatable. Like, yes, I got harassed. Yes, I got assaulted, and that's really important to address. But if we don't look at the underbelly of these programs and controller forces that are concentrated in things like satanic ritual abuse, the Illuminati families that basically orchestrate all the big storylines that we see in the news that are behind things like world wars and behind things like weather modification and natural disasters that we're seeing today, if we don't start to go deeper, then how can we possibly heal ourselves from the surface issues and resolve it once and for all? Because right now we're in this amazing window period where the masculine and feminine is coming together. The integration of polarity is very available to all of us. But if we don't start to look at the things that have been running their programs through the power structures that we adopt belief systems about, it's like, what is the root of the distortions between the masculine and feminine, between the division of the right brain and the left brain, between light and dark? If we're just arguing about the symptoms of how they show up in our society and we're just demonizing each other for the mistakes that were made when we were teenagers or, as adults, even though they're terrible and they should be called out, we need to look at the underbelly and look at the programmings and the timeline manipulations, the artificial intelligence, and the manipulation, things like Project Mockingbird, which has controlled the media and controlled certain people in positions of power to create a narrative that socially engineers individuals. So we're fighting about the product of what we've become instead of the root. And it's so scary to look at the root of it because it's so dark. As we know, in a human vessel, when we're not in balance, it's very easy for narcissists and control freaks to get the best of us. But when we're sovereign and we're strong, we tend to deflect that. So we need to learn how to starve the parasitic forces and not be played with the outer facades. And this is what we see even in the disclosure community. When we start to put people on pedestals, it means we're giving our power away. So it means if they make up the wrong step, then we're like, then we get to find a reason to not like them anymore. What about just being sovereign and just allowing everybody to share their story without giving our power away to anyone? Then we can be a unified community where we can come together with mutual love and respect, where everybody can be empowered, and we're not just looking for a savior or looking for a guru or looking for somebody who has a greater, more profound ET story or UFO experience. Why don't we all just give ourselves a little bit more credit? And if we're really connected to the truth, some of us are going to maintain the sacred flame of integrity to make sure it doesn't get out of control.
Absolutely.
Another person, Vicky Poland, she appeared on the Oprah Winfrey show and said her family was a part of a satanic cult that dates back all the way to the 1700s.
Jeez. Wow. Do you know what the name of it was?
No, but she goes into, a lot of detail, but she basically said child trafficking, ritual sex abuse, and MK Ultra are a single worldwide operation run by the US, UK, and Australian secret services. Wow. And she went on the Oprah show, and it didn't go so well because when she started to talk about the Jewish Satanists, it started to light people up. And the thing is, we don't want to mix these things because the Melchizedek lines, which are considered Hebrews, were infiltrated. Because as we step down into the lower densities, we have a lot more free will, and it's easy for us to get infiltrated. So yes, certain aspects of the Jewish culture did, but it doesn't mean that was just same like with Christians and Catholics.
My point's always been this, is like, if someone's calling themselves a Christian and someone's calling themselves Jewish, right? If they're not practicing that actual religion, why are you calling them Jewish? Why are you calling them Christians?
And this is why we got to drop the label.
It could be Buddhism, it could be Taoism.
Like,
I mean,
actually, this is something really important for our community to understand too. Is like we have to separate out. Like if you're going to bring up the Jewish satanic line or something like that, just be aware of how that's going to be perceived, so that you can get the point across without affecting people, right? Because it's not that you're wrong. Like maybe those people consider them Jews, but actually real Jews would be really insulted by that, right? Yeah.
And that's where the fine line is. It's like there's a part of the Jewish culture that has nothing to do with that. It's like you're looking at a mob and a mafia within these different races, and they all join together. Where you have Nazis, Zionists, and they might claim different things. The whole thing is if they can say that this is the religion or this is the race that they're associated with, then all of a sudden we're going to condemn them. Even an ET race. Oh, all Greys are bad, or all Anunnaki are bad, or all Jews are bad now because we're seeing this larger picture, or all Nazis are bad, or all German. It's all almost like there's a core agenda that is streaming this sort of manipulation so that we're constantly at war with each other, that even if we're in the ascension window period, we're holding on to these historic resentments based on these names and labels. It's like, okay, so the Melchizedek lines did get infiltrated. So did the Germans. So they don't really care about the Jews. They don't care about all those labels, but they know we do because of what our family heritage is, right? So we're standing behind, oh, well, I was raised Jewish, so I'm insulted, or I come from a German family, so I'm insulted, or, and I'm not talking about me, I'm just talking about the way people are raised and the way these dialogues happen that create battles.
So hey, let me ask you a question. So Vicky Poland, who you just mentioned, right? She went on the Oprah show, which is actually pretty curious because trying to drop this information on the Oprah show, I mean, wow, right? Mm-hmm. So like, I've always kind of considered most of the things that are mainstream talk shows to kind of have a foot in on some of these things.
I agree.
So what's going on there? Like, how was that even allowed onto the show unless there was something else going on? I mean, I'm just curious what your take is on that.
I think they're always trying to make us feel like we're making progress. It's like they'll expose something and then they'll kind of be like, okay, well, this is how we're going to deal with it, and then we'll put it over there. There's a lot of things that are set up to appease that part of us that needs more exposure. It's like there are a lot of cases of satanic ritual abuse going to courts and being, dealt with. There's scapegoats like Kevin Spacey or the producer Weinstein. But it's still not looking at the pedophile rings in Hollywood, but it's saying, well, we'll throw a few out there to give you guys a bone to chew on, to make everybody think, because you have suspicions that we're addressing this as a human race. And we'll deal with those few cases, but then we'll focus on the more surface stuff.
Well, even like Bill Cosby, like we've talked about him earlier, I mean, now after doing all of this and researching all this, it even made me question. It's like, not saying that what happened to Bill Cosby it wasn't true. I'm just meaning, like, did they use him is that a possibility?
I think there were so many people coming forward that they couldn't say, we're not going to deal with this. Mm-hmm. So it was like there were so many witnesses, there were so many victims that it was like, it would be an outrage of injustice if something wasn't going to be done. Whereas if you're dealing with one person like Fiona Barnett saying this about Anthony Kidman or about the pedophile rings in Australia, you know, just looking at one person like Sarah Ruth Ashcroft talking about Hillary Clinton or even Tom Hanks, that's one person. You know, but there's many people that are saying this about Hillary, so there's a lot of attention going on underneath the surface too. So what we see on the stage is a lot different than what's going on behind the scenes, because there are a lot of indictments, a lot of people think that's BS. But look at all the fires that are happening. Look at all the chaos that's happening now that they're getting ready to really do arrests.
And then like the mainstream media, once they get a hold of it, then it is like, oh, this person is crazy. They have no credible evidence.
False memories. It's just a smear on the Democrats.
So it's really
But it's
hard.
like Bush is Republican and he's just as bad. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's totally it.
This has nothing to do with race.
Yeah,
Nothing
or
with race or
political party.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about Isaac Cappy? What do you know?
Well, all I know is he did some minor roles, I think, in Hollywood. He was a really good friend of Seth Green for a while. Yeah. So he was very exposed to Hollywood. One of his best friends, from what I know, was Seth Green and his girlfriend. And there were a lot of exchanges that they had between them that got exposed as far as conversations, you know, very friendly. And then I guess one day Seth had offered him like, hey, this is all you need to do in order to get this. And it had to do with doing something incredibly abusive to children. Well, that's one example. There's also a documentary called An Open Secret. It's been banned.
I saw it.
This is the one we watched.
Yeah, we saw it. Yeah.
So you had to search a little bit to be able to find
and
it.
there's two of them, right? Because that one,
There's
the
a
real one
disinformation
came
one,
out,
too.
and then there was a disinformation with the same name that came out a year later. This is the one on iTunes. The other one is like banned, and so you can only watch it. I think
the one on iTunes is the false one.
Yeah.
The one on Vimeo. If you find the one on
I think I saw the one on Vimeo.
Yeah, that's the correct one.
Is it the one with the kid in the end who's disabled after he came home?
You saw the real one.
Yeah. So, so that kind of thing where, you know, a person has experienced enough of Hollywood, enough of the entertainment industry to see the pedophilia going on. A lot of the cases connected to some of these children, they actually were prosecuted. Some fled, some served jail time. You know, so a lot of it got covered up. They got rehired, or they only, you know, had to be punished for just a small amount of time. Okay, so folks are calling out people like Steven Spielberg, some of these directors, some of these well-known names. Isaac Cappy's been calling them out. So everybody's always got to, you know, just take it with a grain of salt. Everything deserves a fair investigation as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. There's a lot of people in Hollywood that are being the scapegoats or coming forward, but they're not talking about the SRA. I've also had clients that have been to some of these Hollywood rituals, and they're like, this actor was there, this is what they did, and I was called a grand dame or a mother goddess, and they have all these different things going on, and this person's just confiding in me. They don't want any money. They don't want me to think they're nuts. They're just saying, you know, you're the kind of person that has an open enough mind, and I have to tell you, they lived in Hollywood.
Well, and you know, Roseanne's kind of been thrown under the bus for a lot of stuff, but she's trying to expose...
A racist comment, she gets fired, and Tom Hanks is accused of pedophilia, and we're probably going to see him in the next movie with Meryl Streep.
What is going on, people?
It's time to call out satanic ritual abuse, child trafficking. We are in a position where it's up to us. You know, we're the powers that be. We need to protect our children. We need to protect future generations. And the thing is, if we can take that step, the governments will respond. It'll morph them into something else, but it's from the inside out. We can't expect it from the outside in. And that's why we keep complaining or pushing people off of pedestals that we thought could lead us. We are the leaders. We need to take the responsibility. I know based on, you know, just studying it, and the earth grids, our DNA, it's like, when we purify our inner elements, the earth has no choice but to respond to us. If we can upgrade these dormant strands, we're not in a 3D world anymore. We are looking at the harmonic universes that we're able to perceive. And it starts to clean up the environment. It starts to clean up our dynamics amongst each other. And so that's what leadership is setting that example.
And I think for our viewers who may not quite understand, I think what you're saying is like the 3D reality, it's like, you know, kind of my understanding, it's like everything's kind of flat, right? But it's like beyond this, you start seeing what creates the essence of life beyond that, right? It's like you're seeing beyond this reality, and you can start seeing the connections and the just the energies, I guess that you could say, that really each person holds. And when you start connecting with that, that's when I feel like that's when we connect as a human race, and like we're just unstoppable.
Exactly.
Right.
Everything that streams through the television is really separating us from nature. You know, anytime, you know, that's why I love the fact that I have a background in wilderness expedition leadership, because you couldn't get closer to everybody, because you're up against the elements, you're up against, you know, the creatures, you're up against yourself and spirit and your own willpower. You know, when we're up against each other based on what we saw on television and what we're programmed to think, we're in conflict, we're in ego competition, we're choosing sides, we're really in this low place. So it doesn't mean that people need to go off and do that kind of thing, but you know, it surrounds us. You know, it's that moment to be able to look at a tree and look at a bird versus, you know, look at the latest BS lower level mentality that is going to cause us to be very toxic as far as, you know, chemtrails are concerned or anything else. When you're in a different higher dimensional energy, even if you're breathing it in, you're able to transmute it because you're in a higher dimensional space. And nature is the ultimate. It's not fixed, it's evolving, it's beyond 3D. 3D is a trap. And if we can come together with these higher principles and just look at the natural world and trust it a little bit more and work with technologies to be in harmony with nature and start to set up a system that can sustain us in harmony with nature so that everybody benefits, we're serving our soul, because nature is an outer reflection of our soul. It's earth, air, fire, water. Everything that the earth provides heals us. The rest of it is either pharmaceuticals, artificial intelligence, things to mask who we truly are, fear, anxiety, and timelines that are feeding on our traumas that they've created, feeding on the conquer and divide, so we constantly are at war with each other, and that's not where it's at. So the minute we step away from it, then the hardest part is completed. Because I think a lot of people are like, well, how do we do this? How do we ascend? So they're waiting for something to kind of come in, when all we have to do is surrender to what already is. Because where all these astrological alignments are going, the fact that we're in alignment with the galactic plane, the fact that the mother energy is anchored back into the planet since 2010, and the hosting of the ascension timelines is shifted, all we need to do is just be available for it and receive it and allow it to generate into our environment. And all we have to do is cut the rest off, which are just distractions. They're draining, they cause us ill health, but the beauty is that the very symptoms of our disconnect are the very things that can bring us back to ourselves. Sometimes we fear them, and so we give our power away more. But I always like to remind my clients, at least, or myself, if you have a physical symptom, if you have some sort of mental issue or emotional issue, allow it to bring you closer to yourself, not further away.
Yeah.
You don't have to give your power away because of it. You don't have to go into fear. And, you know, even people watching the video, it's like a lot of people just want to immediately slam, you know, anything that they can because it makes them feel better. Oh, she talks too fast. She's probably sick. You know, where she go? It's like, you know, can't we all just be a little bit more?
Yeah, no more BS lower level mentalities, people.
Come on.
That was my favorite thing she said all day.
We wouldn't do it to you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Nice catch.
Thanks.
Yeah, so
we should probably
we have to wrap it up now.
Well, we're powerful creator beings, and so we really need to make sure our creative channels are encoded with divine instructions, our visions, our dreams, our hopes, our goals, our devotion to the higher aspects of ourselves, and be willing to bring it into the physical so that the physical can change. Anytime we allow something else in, anytime we give our power away, we're compromised. And so if we could all come together and choose to be sovereign, knowing that sovereignty is a prerequisite to unity consciousness, we don't all have to think the same. We can enjoy our differences and just be a part of a greater conversation without the conflict and division, and just really just think of the priority. Here we have like people losing their homes, losing loved ones every day, whether that's the fires in California or something else we see in the world. The minute that hits our world, what is the most important thing we think about? The things that we wish we could have said to that person that died, the things that we wish we could have done to make it all different, because it's not the money that matters, it's not the war or the side that we wish other people understood. It's the love, it's the unity, it's the sacredness of it all. And we always have that epiphany when it's too late. So let's not wait till that moment happens, and let's have it now.
No regrets.
And celebrate each other. And recognize that there is no true death. We're multidimensional, infinite beings. But let's start to improve the quality of our life and not let anybody else play us. And just not wait for tragedy to recognize the true priority.
How can you not agree with this message? Seriously.
Aw, thank you.
So guys, as always, hit like and subscribe, and make sure you hit the notification bell. And we'll see you out
on the edge.
Yes. So we're gonna say we'll see you out, and you're gonna be like on the edge. Right, that's it.
We'll
That's all
see
you
you
have
out
to
here
do.
on the edge.
No, we're gonna say we'll see you out, and then you're gonna say on the edge.
Be sure to hit like and subscribe, and as always, we'll see you out. Oh wait, that was both of us should say that.
What just happened?
I don't know. So I'll just say like and subscribe again.
Yeah.